Do you remember the way robots spoke when you were growing up, for those of you who are old enough? Always in monotone. But when I heard the mention of the word AI the other time, it's come to a time that even the fellow who is looking at you right now speaking to you could be AI. Guess what? You wouldn't even know. But I assure you, this is my real face. Let's also have this conversation.
And your real voice.
It's a post-event interview on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that held on last Wednesday, last Wednesday, June 21st, beg your pardon. And it was themed Unleashing the Power of Youth in Science and Innovation. Chinedum Iwuzie joins us this morning. He's Director, MBA Programs, Lagos Business School. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hi, good morning.
First of all, let me ask you, what was the energy in the room like, especially of the young people?
I mean, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. People came with a lot of expectations. People came with a lot of ideas. But it was also interesting to see that people were not intimidated. So you had a lot of people who were doing a lot of great stuff, trying to ask questions, networking, trying to understand. Nobody was in any way intimidated. So you could see, a lot of drive, a lot of Nigerian drive. So in the same way we see a lot of progress in the creative industry and artists, we're also seeing that same confidence also in the tech industry, in the innovation industry. So I mean, it was great to be in the room.
Well, forgive me for dragging you into what looks like a bit of a controversy. I mean, we're talking about youth innovation technology here. The kind of thing that happened in the previous conversation we had around JAM and technology seeming to play a role that isn't so friendly, almost as, according to the young lady, scandalizing her, will be something. But that's technology. Technology could give way. Technology could mess up. We saw all of that, some of that, of course, during the elections, which is still a subject of several controversies. Do you see this kind of panel, this kind of event that you had, helping in the near and not too far future from now, staving off such challenges in real time, especially with the young people in the driver's seat?
Yes, definitely. I think one lesson that we took away from Bill Gates' visit is that technology is technology, but really it's how you use it, okay? And if you look at the way he structured his trip, the kind of people he went to see, so he went to see traditional rulers, he went to see the president, he came to see us LBS, he went to CC Hub, he went to different stakeholders. So you can see what he was doing was basically building an ecosystem of stakeholders, basically taking everybody's interests into place.
Which is essentially what technology does.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Technology is not a tool to punish, technology is not a tool to scandalize, technology is a tool to make progress. And you could clearly see that in the way he approached the use of technology. So it's not something to be feared, but it's something to be utilized as within an ecosystem.
For me, I wonder if the direction of the questions of the youth at that forum, if it pointed to, where their minds are. Some of them asked him to comment on the Japa syndrome. The other young guy was asking, what he would do if it would change, policy direction for government, to galvanize the potential of young people.
Yeah.
So does it suggest that, this resource pool of young persons who are creatives, who are, tech, big on technology, do not have their minds at home?
They do. I think that it really points to the understanding of technology in an ecosystem and using it to solve social problems. I think that we've gotten to the point of realizing a phone is a phone, it depends on what you use it for. So I think the questions that people were asking was really, how do I use innovation, how do I use tech to solve these problems, and what's its impact? So the JAPA thing, what is the impact for us on Nigeria? How can we reverse the trend? And he gave us some great insights in it. So I think that is what has happened now. I think that we're no more just asking for more technology, we're really asking ourselves, how can we use technology to solve social problems?
And, the magnate also talked about AI, was big on AI and how we need to use it to solve health and education problems, malaria. And we've also seen him, you know, in a lot of meetings at the villa with the founder of the Dangote Foundation as well. Does it point to his direction, what's on his mind for investment in terms of technology in Nigeria? And are we going to be seeing, you know, something more visible, you know, after this co-creation initiative?
I think his goal was basically to wake us up and help us, you know, point us in the direction of the ecosystem. I think that he came to make it clear that it's not just you having an innovative idea, you know, and you bring it out. You need the government, which is why, for example, the first place he went to visit was the president. Irrespective of what he felt or didn't feel about it, he recognized the fact that this is the president, and he went there. He also went to visit the academic community. He went to visit University of Lagos and mentioned some researchers that, you know, had done a lot of things in agriculture. He visited other areas. He, you know, got us together, LBS, CC Hub, basically talked about the business side of innovation, talked about the tech hubs. He had an open meeting with different people. So like I said, the interesting thing was the array of visitors he made and the understanding that innovation and technology is not just going to be driven by you sitting down, you know, developing some fancy product, but you need to be able to handle these different stakeholders. So
creating an ecosystem for
an ecosystem of everybody, not just.
But Dr. Wilson, not everyone will believe you when you say that he just came to wake us up. Some would say that there's a real interest, you know, for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Nigeria at this time, which is, you know, physical investment.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot in terms of solving social problems. So I think you must be aware of what the role they play, particularly in solving malaria, you know, and the different forms of mortality. So yes, so they're making investments, but not just in money, but also in personnel. So they have a very fantastic team here who sits down to identify these issues and they work towards it. So the investment he's making is not so much about money.
Okay.
I mean, he's not throwing money on the problem. Neither is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation doing that. They're actually building capacity to solve these problems. Okay,
so talking about capacity, I mean, let's talk about some takeaways now before we wrap it up. So young people were at that meeting, and as you said, they've been galvanized, woken us up, even if we weren't sleeping really. But the question I want to ask is, so that event has happened.
Yeah.
Some sparks have been created. Some hearts have been lit up. How do we sustain that spark to make it become a big fire and not just a candle that will fizzle out with the wind?
So one is more conversations. So we were fortunate to have Bill Gates, but who says we need to stop at Bill Gates? And who says we can't also look at our own African entrepreneurs? I mean, there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of great stuff in Africa. We can have this kind of conversations. Two is impact on policy. And like I said, considering the kind of visits he made, it's clear that he understands the impact of policy and, you know, laws in terms of sustaining the system. Three is just a couple of us getting together and deciding, you know what, we want to take this conversation further. We don't need the government. We don't need to be on Channels TV to do that. I mean, these are conversations that can happen outside. And also, basically, waking up to the interest. It was also interesting to see that some of the people who were at the events were regular people who were bankers, people who were teachers, but who had decided, you know, to solve problems using technology and are doing that. So I think that a lot of us need to get involved, more involved. More people get involved. Whether it's a banker, whether it's a finance person, whether it's a teacher, there are lots of social problems that we can use technology to solve. Yeah.
Now, you said something repeatedly. You've mentioned it about 2 or 3 times now. And that is, we need the government.
Yeah.
But then there are those who also argue we don't need the government for everything. But let's talk about the need for government. The trust quotient between the government and young people in particular is in the red. And if we're looking at it in the bank statement, it's in the red. And now, I mean, Mr. Gates visited the presidency and a number of other government institutions, as you have said it. So do you see this event as part of the takeaways, building on that relationship to help secure or rather credit the trust quotient between the young people and government? Because anything government is with a pinch of salt these days.
You're right. And I'm sure that, like in any economy, I mean, any developing economy, the trust quotient between the government and the youth sometimes is not at its best, okay? And there are efforts, there are things that can be done. I would like to recommend one thing, right? And it's not just a question of trade money or regulation, but government, for example, is the largest spender in Nigeria. Government, for example, can decide to patronize a lot of people who are developing these solutions. So, and we know that if you go to the government ministries, for example, you can see stacks of files and all of that. And there are little automations that can be done, and we have people who are doing these things. So rather than government, forming, the role policy is important, money is important, but you can be a buyer. The government can decide, for example, to be a major buyer of technology, and these guys are coming up with all kinds of solutions, HR processes, automation processes. Governments can decide to just purchase and buy these things. And I think that at the end of the day, when there's money exchanging and your customer, then the trust quotient is not, that problem doesn't exist as much anymore.
I noted a lot of potential in the room also, during that interaction, particularly from those who were on the panel that talked about what they were doing with technology, health insurance, communication, and all of that. And you talked about, what Bill Gates has come to do, which is to build capacity. Yeah. How much of that potential or work already being done in the room is prepared for the work that Bill Gates plans to do in the country? And, what were the partnerships that were birthed, from the bank that you have put together of creatives in Nigeria from that meeting?
Okay, so let's have some realistic expectations of the meeting. Okay, so it's like I said last time, it's not like you're going to have this one meeting and all of a sudden everything is going to change and the world is going to become a better place from one meeting. Sometimes conversation starts and sometimes the road to development is quite long. Okay, but the point is that it has started. Okay. What are the likely outcomes of this? So we also had some interactions between some of the founders, financiers, employees. So there's a lot of interaction, networking that went on, and cards were exchanged and all of that. It might be a bit too soon to begin to point and say, okay, this happened, that happened, that happened. But the point was that these things happened. There was networking, exchange of cards, exchange of ideas, and we're getting to see, getting some feedback, but it would be hard at this point for me to begin to point and say, that's the exact outcome of the event.
What do you expect from, the youth who participated? How can they begin to position themselves for what's coming?
Yeah, so one is to recognize the role of building an ecosystem. You can't sit down in your house to build or your organization to build some tech products. You need to go out to the markets. You need the government, you need the researchers, you need the academic community, you need the financiers, you need a lot of things. We tend to focus so much on the money, but money is one part, is a piece of the puzzle, and there are many other sides to the puzzle, and that's what I think he came to show us, that look, and to be honest, he barely spoke about money, he barely spoke about investment, but he was talking about other things, the other key drivers. So I think that's a good place to start.
Even though, merely saying Bill Gates, anyone sees money first. But let me ask you this: how many cities in Nigeria were represented in the room? Can you hazard a guess?
Okay, so don't forget is that it was online. So there was online. So there was not just the Nigerian community. There was also an African community.
Oh, great.
So it was African. People joined from different places around the world, from Europe, from the US, from Nigeria, from different parts of Nigeria. Okay. In the room, the selection of people in the room wasn't necessarily based on geography, but it was based on the community that you belong in. So we had the journalists, we had the academics, we had the researchers, we had the founders. It didn't have anything to do with geography.
Okay, so what do we expect next? Direct follow-up to this.
So direct follow-up first is, first we're going to have more of such conversations. So today, or rather a couple of weeks ago, we had Bill Gates, and we're going to have more people like that who are going to be coming to, have this kind of, organize this kind of forums, or these forums will be built around them. Second is a lot of connections had happened, so we're going to be driving these things in the communities. For us at LBS, a lot more participation in the tech hubs, so we're forming more alliances, because really a lot of innovation is happening at those tech hubs, and like Bosu had said, I think we have about over 100 or 150, so a lot of communities are being built. So it's for us, we're going to support those communities in terms of building innovation, turning ideas into businesses. So those are the kind of things that
you have talked of. You've mentioned quite a number of times now how we need government. So, in terms of thinking along the lines of Bill Gates' thinking and some of the propositions he made, what proposals can government begin to call from creatives about solving practical problems? For instance, using technology to solve corruption in public institutions, using technology to solve health problems in the healthcare sector. So what kind of proposals do you expect from government?
I think government just first. So yeah, all those things are nice, but I think that there's the basic functioning of the government that we know has lapses, right? So why can't we just have the government come out and say, you know what, we have this problem in this ministry, we have 1,000 files we need to automate. Okay, do an RFP. Come up with an idea to solve this thing. Throw it out in the open.
What's an RFP?
RFP, request for proposal. Okay. Throw out a request for proposal to say, okay, we want to solve the problem with the Ministry of Agriculture. Come up with ideas. You know, that spurs creativity, and people are going to come up with all kinds of ideas. I think that those are the little things that can happen. Government is sitting down on a bedrock of problems, administrative problems, operational problems that can be solved. Then we can move to the higher things. You know, okay, all these big things that we're talking about. I think that and like I said, government is the biggest spender in this country, so government can turn itself into a customer of the output from these industries.
But very, very
interesting there.
You know, that you put it that way. I see that this event is a product of many partnerships.
Oh, yeah.
From within Nigeria and from outside Nigeria?
Well, in some sense, yeah.
In some sense, okay. So now you've talked about government coming, you know, out and making these requests, but I don't know how that would happen. Do you see your program or this initiative also partnering with government in one way or the other? Because I'm not sure I saw a government representation in that pool of partners.
Yes, so in the pool of 5 partners, the government as such wasn't there. And I think that's feedback that we've also taken, that going forward, these kind of discussions, we need to have government representatives. So yes, of course, we're engaging government, individually and collectively, to basically ask ourselves, you know, so we have our communique and we have the problems that we identified. So we're trying to engage government at different levels to basically come up with ideas on how we can solve this problem. So yes, that's happening.
Okay. We have to thank you very much for being a part of our conversation this morning, and trust that, I mean, in the not too distant future, this follow-up that you talked about is gonna happen. Chinedu Mewuzie, Director, MBA Programs, Lagos Business School. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.